Welcome to the Fraser Coast Property Brief, the podcast where property, development and business leaders share what's really happening across the Fraser Coast. Each episode brings you insights into local projects, market trends and the people helping shape the future of our region. Welcome to another episode of Fraser Coast Property Brief. Today I'm joined by David Lee, State Member for Hervey Bay, to discuss the recently delivered 26-27 Queensland Budget and what it means for our local community. Welcome, David.
Great to be here, Glen.
So there's some significant wins for Hervey Bay, including new fire departments, hospital investment and replacement police and housing enabling infrastructure. So I want to go into that. Also want to discuss the new Wide Bay Regional Plan, which has come out again for amended session and some public consultation moments. So we'll delve into that at the end. But let's start with the budget. And, you've been local member for Hervey Bay. So let's look at specifically at our electorate and what do you consider the big wins in the budget for the Hervey Bay region?
Yeah, look, I think the two big wins for me undoubtedly would be the starting to deliver the Hervey Bay Fire and Rescue Station. And also the other big win would be the new police station. So the Hervey Bay Fire and Rescue Station, there was a lot of hoo-ha at the last election. The previous government acquired the land, but what they didn't do was provide the funding for the construction of the new fire station. And once that was apparent to me, on being elected, I immediately made contact with the local fireys, had that discussion to make it clear that it wasn't in the budget. And now my role as the new state MP was to start to advocate, because clearly, with the massive development we have here in Hervey Bay, with all these housing approvals that are coming through, I think currently there's on the Fraser Coast alone, over 1,000 building approvals. There's thousands in the pipeline. We've got high-rise development on the way. We've got 14 lifestyle villages. The hardworking fireys cover off on the aviation precinct and the airport as well. They've been on the current site since 1962. The only redevelopment that occurred on that site was following a cyclone in the early 90s. And clearly it's no longer fit for purpose. And so my role on becoming the MP was to immediately lobby. And so within 12 months, I had Minister Anne Lade, Minister for Emergency Services, on site, Fire, Disaster and Rescue, had her on site. I had the Deputy Premier and I had the Premier. And then I immediately started lobbying the Treasurer and all the relevant ministers. And so what's happened is we have an allocation of $10 million in the budget, this year's budget. That's very much directed towards doing the groundwork and preparing for tender for the next budget to get a line item in there. So I'm very, very confident that's going to happen. My role now is, now that we've got that in the budget, we're doing that preliminary work on that site, which is on the corner of Main Street and Durlong Road. My role now is to ensure that we have the fit for purpose infrastructure. So I'm very much directed towards making sure that we've got the 4 engine bays included in that site and that they're at sufficient height to accommodate future vehicles that would be needed for high-rise fires. So that's where we are with the fire and rescue station at this point.
So it's been in Torquay Road for a number of years. It is inadequate. So one of the things that I don't think people realise, we've got a lot of approvals in place now along the Esplanade and even in the CBD for these buildings, 8 or more stories. But our previous fire department and the trucks wouldn't have been able to look after fires in these. So, we're the cart before the horse, haven't we, for many years now?
Yeah, and that's why it's so important that the new station has an appropriate designed bay with the appropriate height, because this particular vehicle for high-rise fires is fairly high, so we need to make sure that we've got that future-proofed at the outset. So I'm very much focused on making sure that they have a fit-for-purpose site that meets the existing and also plans for the future needs, because that degree of, and I know sometimes government departments don't like it, but we do have to build in the future-proofing. We have to have that site appropriately designed for future expansion to serve the growing needs of our community.
So when do you think this will be open as a fire station?
So obviously, as the state member, we've got an election in 2028, and I would hope that it's well advanced by the election in 2028. So we could safely say by the end of 2028, I want to see either the building opened or very close to being commissioned.
And you're the Premier up here cutting a ribbon at the end of 2028.
Let's hope.
All
Yeah.
right.
So I'm very much directed towards that goal. In relation to the police station, the previous proposal, so there's been $28 million as a line item in the police budget capital budget for a number of years. The agenda very much for the previous government was actually to redevelop the existing site.
Yeah.
And if you've ever seen the existing site, I know it's integrated with the watch house and the courthouse. They are landlocked. It's very much a late 1980s, very early 1990s construction. So it doesn't lend itself to being redeveloped.
Yeah.
If anything good could come out of Cyclone Alfred, ex-tropical Cyclone Alfred, it was the fact that the police station had to be evacuated because it was surrounded by water.
Right.
And so that has aided the advocacy around having a second new police station in Hervey Bay. So I'm looking forward to making an announcement on that site in the coming weeks.
Right.
So that'll see us with a second
you're not going to disclose early, but you have got a site in mind?
There's a site in mind, and we're just in the process of finalising contractual negotiations for that purchase.
So would that mean we have two police stations, or you just move everything from the existing site to a new one?
That will mean we have two police stations because we need to keep the existing station because of its integration with the watch house.
Yeah, and the courthouse.
So the city watch house and the courthouse and that police station will still have a role in the community, but we'll have a second police station.
Right. That's great news. We're feeling it as a community. You can see there's a lot more, youth crime. I know your state government's trying to get under control, but there's a lot more hooning and things like that.
Yeah.
To have more police presence here would be good.
So that's certainly something, and even yesterday I was on the phone to the Assistant Commissioner advocating for certain projects here in Hervey Bay.
Yeah. All right. That's good. Health's one of your passions, has always been your passion, because, you were in the industry for many years before your political career. So it's one of the biggest issues in Hervey Bay. We've got an ageing population, average age 51, biggest influx is over 65. We've got very high health dependency, and 22% of our workforce are in the health or NDIS thing. What's the government doing in this budget and going forward to improve our health services?
So we're continuing on with the $96 million investment that we're making in that current site, which was we allocated about $2 million for the expansion of the car park for staffing, because car parking is clearly an issue. And we've got the $94 million development, which is the redevelopment of the ED site, which will see 25 general medical beds, and included in that is 4 coronary care specific beds and 10 ICU beds.
Yep.
So the helipad's been completed. They're finalising the vertical lift shaft, so that'll improve the integration for people being evacuated to tertiary facilities, as well as receiving patients. So that piece of work is still locked in the budget, and we're continuing with that as part of the hospital rescue plan. But the next critical bit is that one of the big challenges we've got with that site is, and again, this is a planning legacy issue, we're landlocked on that site. Right. Unfortunately, over many, many years, there's been very much a reactive approach to wherever there's an available space, there seems to be construction happening. There's been a lack of an overarching master plan for that location. And to a certain degree, I think, acting in a silo in relation to the relationship with St. Stephen's Hospital across the road. So it really needs from my viewpoint, a total health precinct approach, an overarching health precinct approach. This is where both you and I have banged on about this for a number of years, I think, about the TAFE site being an appropriate location for decanting some services off the existing site. So I'm pushing very hard at the moment for the completion of a Hervey Bay Hospital master plan.
I have to include part of the TAFE as well in that master.
Which would include part of the TAFE. And look, I think we have to give some expectations management here. We're not going to get a new hospital. No. The government's got a firm commitment to the Olympics in 2032. Bundaberg Hospital's kicked off with working towards the major milestones for the Bundaberg Hospital. But as the member for Hervey Bay, I'm determined that we're not going to be overshadowed by the development at Bundaberg. But Bundaberg should have a new hospital. There's no question about that. But I'm determined as the member for Hervey Bay to make sure that we're not overshadowed by that development. So our master plan needs to be very much focused on the TAFE site as a possible location for more of the ambulatory chronic disease management facilities.
Yeah.
I think the process needs to be carefully staged, so that we've got a realistic time frame on staging. And the one big thing I'm pushing for in stage 1 is a cardiac cath lab.
Yeah, that's major in here.
Yeah,
that's big,
and that's something that's well supported by clinicians locally here, whether it's Dr. Nick Yim, cardiologists, intensive care specialists and ED specialists. We really, really need that here. And I have to say, another big win for me was the MRI, which I'm happy to say I got advised by the Minister's office just in the last week that the process is underway in terms for the tender to fit out that area in preparation for the construction of the MRI installation.
You're also working on a mental health nurse in the emergency areas and some of the ramping issues and reducing the stretcher times, things like that. Is that starting to exceed now? Or?
Yeah, so our ramping's down to 25%.
Yeah.
So that's a great result.
Yeah.
And I take my hat off to the hardworking healthcare staff at Hervey Bay Hospital and the AMBOs. So we're down to 25%. The mental health specialist is a really important addition, particularly because we get all sorts of presentations in ED, and I think having that specialist service can only add, more better value to the clinicians and the overall clinical management of those patients that present with mental health issues.
Yep. And before we get off the hospital, just a little suggestion from a developer's point of view. You've got a big council car park next to St. Stephen's. Turn it into a multi-level car park or flyover. Take the car park out of the hospital and you can build on there.
That's
exactly a perfect
right.
expansion.
That's exactly right. One thing we won't do is to promise to deliver a $60 million multi-storey car park that has no funding in the budget.
No, get one of the car park operators down south to actually develop it themselves.
But I think, but this is where I think it's really important that there's a degree of collaboration with St. Stephen's in the planning, and car parking is an integral part of that. So it makes sense to look at possible overpasses across the road there because it's getting busier and busier, and integrating. You have to have car parking as part of that total equation.
Yeah. And I see you announced with the Deputy Premier the other week that you're selling up to back 8+ hectares of the TAFE site, trying to get some sort of residential landlocked, in that landlocked area there. What's your hopes that? Is this more housing that's appropriate for medical or students or things like that? Is there aim out of this?
Yeah, so we announced that a couple of weeks ago with the Deputy Premier. So that's under our land activation program at choosing idle state government land. So this will be a fairly lengthy process, but my hope, my aspiration for that 8.8 hectares, and I have to say, initially when I heard about it, I was a little bit cranky. But I'm very, very comfortable with the fact that we've got that balance of 21, I think it's over 20 hectares for the rest of the site that can be used, including that water body that can be used for the health precinct. So what I'd like to see in that location is, I think there's opportunities for mixed housing, but I'd like to see a specific focus included in that mixed housing option around temporary accommodation for healthcare workers, because we have a lot of I describe as kind of like, in some cases, fly in, fly out workers or workers that are coming for short periods of time that can't access the housing market. And I think having that style of housing product available would just be fantastic to support our healthcare workforce.
Yeah. I've talked about it a lot, and I've talked about it with people from medical, because if you're an overseas doctor, you're just doing a 3-month course at the university teaching up there at the hospital. You've got no bonds, you've got no rental credit, credentials. You try and get a short-term accommodation here, so it's stopping the training, stopping the health growth in this area. So something that's
so it'll be a lengthy process. It'll still go through the normal housing approval process. It'll all be managed by ECQ. But I would hope as the local member that I've got a big say in that in the final product.
All right, let's jump into roads. I'll start with the Tyro bypass. That one was just announced the other day that you're starting in the new year. So that's a great addition for the whole region.
It is. It's a great addition. We're currently in round 1 of procurement. So that's been opened up. And I think that round 1 will run to September.
Yep.
And then there'll be a much more detailed, rigorous assessment process that follows on as part of that procurement process. But one of the big holdups at the moment is we can't procure a contract or contractor until the feds sign off on the EPBC.
Right.
So that's currently with the federal government, the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity legislation requirement, because it's dealing with swampland. So we can't actually engage a contractor until that's sorted out, because otherwise it's going to be a great cost to the taxpayer until that process is finalised. So there's an application, I understand, currently with the feds that needs to be approved so that we can get on with building the Tyro bypass.
Right, so we tell our federal friends down Canberra to hurry up, and we need a road.
Yep.
Closer to home, I see there's work going on the Burrell Road, Boundary Road, roundabout area.
That's
so
right.
that's progressing. That will just keep progressing now.
So that's an 18-month project. I drive past there daily, and when things are looking a little bit quiet, I make a few phone calls to find out what's going on. Because the last thing we want to do is see that site there idle for weeks and weeks. So I'm very, very keen that that project is prioritised and that the contractors are getting on with the job.
Yep. And the Pile Burham Hedge Road, Hervey Bay Road seems to have slowed a little bit.
It hasn't slowed. It seems to have slowed, but there's a lot of work in the background. And just this morning, I've had conversations with people about keeping that moving along. So we're still doing some strong advocacy in the background to hopefully get Minister Catherine King to sign off on sharing the load on the development of that intersection.
There's a bit of a backflip from the federal government on that one, wasn't it? They'll go to 80-20 and they try to pull back to 50-50 or something like
currently, it's less than 50 at the moment, Glenn. So that's currently the intersection's costed at 74 million, with the federal government only providing 35 to date. So we're trying to get a bigger commitment to that so that we can get on. So there's still very much it's still absolutely regarded by both myself and John Baranis as a priority project.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of advocacy in the background to get this project moving.
Unfortunately, I think the federal government forgot where Hervey Bay is in recent years.
Yeah.
I haven't seen prior to you, I think the state government forgot as well. So, but you've been doing a great job trying to, bring it to the forefront. Is there any other transport road projects come out of this budget that we should know about?
Not at this stage. Nothing major. So we've got Burrell Boundary Road. We're working on Pile Burham Hedge Road. Hopefully, we can see some movement in that when we do the mid-year financial or economic review. We've got to keep the Fraser Coast Integrated Transport Strategy moving along. So keen to make sure that we've got that project well underway. And every time I make phone calls and speak to the department, I'm assured that the integrated transport strategy has the Bruce Highway access ultimately to Hervey Bay, which is what we desperately need in the future, and the 4-lane connection. Yeah. They're two big priorities for me. The other one is, I should mention too, out on the other, Glenn, the other big project I should mention is the importance of the Urangan Harbour Master Plan. To keep that moving along. So public consultation on that was supposed to open in August, and so I'm just keeping a close eye on.
So the idea of that, there's about 5 different government department leases over that. Yeah. You're trying to bring it into one master plan, one future direction. Are you trying to get it under one department? Or
it'll be very hard, I think, to keep it under one department. Needs to coordinate it. But look, it's a incredibly important piece of work. And like anything with the master plans, what I want to see is that there's some low-hanging fruit in the planning, in the execution, that reaps huge economic value. And that's why I've been pushing for cruise ship access.
All right. Yeah, cool. So let's just talk about housing for a minute. The government's committed $125 million through the Residential Activation Fund for water, sewage, drainage, road infrastructure. So a lot of those things are underway for round 1. Round 2 is getting announced shortly, is it?
Round 2 is getting announced shortly.
Yep. How shortly?
I was going to say they use the word imminent, but it's close. It's close. The announcement is coming. Is close.
And I know one of council's big wish lists is water security.
Mm-hmm.
What's the government doing about water security for a region? I know you've done some changes at Paradise Dam. You've got to completely rebuild that up there. we're trying to get Teddington and Langfalls Dam to connect it so we get better water security for our future population. Is that part of the government's plan to really delve into the water security issue?
I had the privilege of being on the Water and Waste Committee meeting more or less from the outset with the development of the water grid, so I know how much work's gone into that, and I commend the Fraser Coast Regional Council and the amount of they've done some fantastic work on that. So I have the privilege of being involved and across the detail with that. So that certainly helped inform my advocacy with the ministers about getting behind and supporting this project. One thing I will say, so there's a couple of big projects council's been trying to advance. Even when I was on, I sat on council. The other one was the a treatment facility at Polgol, and there's a number of other advocacy projects that have been advanced. But certainly the water security, I'm across that. I've been right behind that, supporting that. We make the point that that interconnection is really important. Is absolutely strategically significant. But it's only part of the solution. We still need to be investigating other options around. So Lenthals Dam, there's no option to raise the walls at Lenthals, or because there's all the water holes and all. No capacity to expand the scope of
I
that.
remember that 10-year battle many years ago.
But there's other projects that could well be looked at, and I think the other one was the Paradise Dam. Connecting the Paradise Dam to Lenthals was ruled out because it was in 2019 dollars. It was about 150 million.
The piping getting.
So the piping's just out of the. So I think there's other options that council can be exploring, and I know there's talk about desalination, but I'd like to see a really rigorous look at access to Fraser Island and see where there's opportunities to tap into the underground aquifer and see what opportunities are there, and be open to another range of solutions.
Millions of litres of fresh water come out per hour.
So
that place,
and I understand. I think from a marine geology point that even the aquifer is actually under the seabed as well. So I think there's some huge opportunities there. But the water grid, the interconnection of the water grid, I think is a really significant step in the right direction. I commend council for their work in that space, and I'm very happy to advocate on their behalf for funding. We'll wait and see.
All right, so let's talk about get away from the budget for a minute. The draft Wide Bay plan. So previous government put out a Wide Bay plan, basically giving us direction for the next 20 years. Most of us in the industry, and I think council and state opposition, that all thought it was rubbish a few years ago. Hervey Bay, Fraser Coast predominantly left out of the Wide Bay plan. This government's picked it up and reviewed it all. So you're just out for public consultation again now? So what's the process now about that?
So that previous plan was botched. Council passed a motion to reject it. There was no science with the dark sky policy, and I think you might ask me a question on that later. But basically, it was botched. It was rushed. There was no consultation. The draft plan's out at the moment for consultation, and submissions close on the 7th of September. But I do believe there's a public forum here at the Hervey Bay Neighbourhood Centre on the 19th of March.
Oh, is it?
Sorry, 19th of August. 19th of August. From 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. So there'll be an opportunity. I'm encouraging organisations like yourself and UDIA and council, the Hervey Bay Chamber of Commerce, to really make important submissions to this draft plan, because it's a 20-year infrastructure plan. I haven't had a deep dive into it. I had a preliminary look at it, but I'm very, very concerned that, as Hervey Bay is one of the fastest growing areas in Queensland. Last night they announced that we won, we got a top award for a top tourist destination. People love coming to visit. We're watching Capital of Australia. We've got a UNESCO listed island on our back doorstep. We've got the largest sand island in the world on a back doorstep, and I'm having trouble finding Hervey Bay in this report.
When you look at the numbers, Hervey Bay's the biggest city. The reason we're already well past Bundaberg. The Fraser Coast is going to go from 120 to 160 odd, thousand people in the next 20 years. But there's, we're still not seen as the centre, and we're still not seen even by the state government or the federal government as a bureaucracy centre for the region. We don't have any major government departments here. Main roads in Bundaberg, fire is in Maryborough, police is in Maryborough, state development, all these departments are not here in Hervey Bay. And it just seems to be insane to me that
it doesn't make a lot of sense.
No.
And this is, I think, a good example of, we've talked about infrastructure not keeping pace with demand, and this is probably a good example of perhaps government services. But I've had a peruse through the document, and I can't see any mention of Hervey Bay as a priority living area, which I find extraordinary. Maryborough, Bundaberg.
But they then do recognise the Nick and Bar and Dundarren growth corridors as a major growth corridor. So they say it in one sense, but they don't talk about what they're actually going to do around it to make it a priority area. Just the dark sky one, it's, people don't understand what dark sky is. Basically, the previous government put a blanket over this area. It was a lot to do with Monrepo turtles and things like that. In Bundaberg, they want a dark shade, so there's no artificial lighting out into the reefs and waterways where the turtles come back. So they put a dark sky from the back of Ghost Hill to the front of our esplanade, saying you can't do any high rise. But in the next page, nearly, the contrary's saying, "Oh, we need a nightlife economy." We need hotels. It's completely contradictory. You can't do one without the other. So some common sense has come into it, and the dark sky has been removed out of Hervey Bay, and they've left it with the Monrepo area, I believe.
Yeah, look, and so basically, yes, the dark sky policy was a blanket policy, no science. Someone must have sat down in Brisbane and just drawn a line through it. So the dark sky policy is actually I think it's Schedule C to this report. And it's put in there as an optional code that council can include as part of their planning scheme. So it's optional. It's not compulsory. It's optional.
Previously they didn't.
And then basically they can intelligently apply it based on the science and the location. Because I've no doubt there may well be locations where this is relevant, but not a blanket, policy. So council has a discretion as this sits at the moment to adopt the dark sky policy as an optional code in the assessments, development assessments.
All right, that's good. So, and the big thing is they need to recognise Hervey Bay in it.
That's the big thing
as a centre. So we need some more senior government departments. We need more infrastructure delivered in the Hervey Bay. We need more education. We need a hospital spend. CBD is a principal activity centre, and things like sewerage and even social infrastructure as well. So I think a lot of those things.
This is a critical document. Absolutely critical document in terms of it's referred to as a regional plan and infrastructure plan that's going to guide government over the next 20 years. So we have once in a generation opportunity, and I'm encouraging as many peak organisations as possible to have some input into this process because, as you've said, we talked about 22% of our workforce is healthcare. So health needs to be front and centre here, along with housing and a whole range of other options and all the things that follow on from that. And that's why I think we've got to. It's really, don't let this opportunity pass us by. We need to have that advocacy to make sure that
the FCPIA will definitely be putting in submission. It's an improved document from the previous government. But I think there's some more focus needs to come back on Hervey Bay again.
Fantastic.
All right, to finish up, bit of accountability. If you wanted to look back, in 4 or 5 years' time, what outcomes did you want to see on the ground in Hervey Bay as your legacy as a state member? I'm hoping or presuming you might run again, but if you're looking back over your time, what's the big things you want to achieve?
Well, I think that, like I mentioned, the fire and police station and the level of staffing to support that, the workforce to support that. Certainly within healthcare, I want to see things well developed in terms of the implementation of the hospital master plan. So the cardiac cath lab would be front and centre in that, getting that into place. The MRI machine will be in there. And then that process to start, because I have to be realistic with my timelines, because it's in the context, as I've said, of the Olympics for 2032. And we started that. So we start the journey with the hospital master plan, but certainly with the getting that ticked off in terms of the cardiac cath lab. The Urungan Harbour, I want to see the cruise ship access. I think that's really important because that'll boost our
So we
intrusive
got deep water access there. I know we used to have it at the end of the old pier.
Yeah. So what would be envisaged would be they'd drop the anchor on the other side of Fraser Island.
Yep.
And then you'd have that ability to tender people in.
Right.
That would be great for the region because people could come and shop locally here.
Yeah.
Whale watching,
Day tours,
island visit, day tours, heritage tours to Maryborough. So I think there's some great opportunities in that space to move along. So they're probably the bigger ones.
What about, because the Olympics come up 2032, what about as far as sports infrastructure? Do you foresee anything?
I think the sporting infrastructure and and I'll leave it for my colleague to comment in Maryborough about the archery side of it. Where I'm focused in terms of the sports infrastructure is we've got, I always said on council that the precinct was an ideal opportunity to concentrate on doing a few things really well.
Yeah.
So I have state-of-the-art, do a few things really well. The proposition to move all of the sporting facilities and a whole range of different codes out there, I just think just wasn't sustainable.
Yeah.
So my focus obviously is I'm working with a number of the organisations now in town to try and get the infrastructure to support. They've been on, like the hockey club, we've done some work. There's been talk about trying to get the Oceania Championships here.
Basketball, build a new building out there.
What's that?
Basketball's
just built a stadium out there. So we can do a few things really well. So obviously as the member for Hervey Bay, my focus is on Hervey Bay and encouraging. I think there's a few facilities we're trying to get night lights. Recently we announced the Bombers and just get improvement. Seagulls have got, I think it's 500 youngsters playing and that attracts, they've attracted the Maroon, we've had the Maroons up here a couple of times, Maroons games.
I'd love to see a 10,000 person stadium out there one day and
so
we can get, pre-games or things. Yeah.
It's probably not in my time that's going to happen because I think with the Olympics, we're going to have a big focus, I think, on some of these bigger regional centres. But that's not to say we can't sort of chip away. And I think as we sign off and hopefully support some of council's other projects, that might release council to have some additional funds to be able to invest in the sports precinct.
All right. I might wrap it up there, David. Thanks again for explaining the budget and the Wide Bay plan. And it's a pleasure to have you back again.
Pleasure to be here.
Joining the Fraser Coast Property Brief.
Thank you.
See you.